Motorsport is famous for its many legendary racetracks, but among the legends, there's some absolutely horrid tracks. Today, I'm going to be reviewing these flops, starting with one that's been raced on recently, Shanghai. Designed by a man who spent his entire life building the exact same racetrack in various places around the world, Shanghai International Circuit is a track that combines the ugliness of Sebring with the character of the Sochi Autodrome. As drivers make their way around the dull circuit, they can feel the social credits running through their veins. The flashy architecture fails to hide the polluted sky at a track where it's impossible to tell what the weather is because the sky is permanently grey. Turn 1 is a frustrating affair that seems to go on for half an hour as its radius tightens up. This gives the corner an optimal mix of a lack of a heavy braking zone to prevent any thoughts of making an overtake, and very low apex speeds combined with a good helping of dirty air to ensure that every box on the dull corner checklist is ticked. After switching back through a short hairpin, the drivers are presented with a short straight that leads into one of the circuit's only 2 overtaking zones, as the drivers brake heavily into a tight hairpin. This is followed by a section of corners which should have been called When You Buy Sepang on Wish.com. It does make sense that Herman Tilke would copy from Sepang, given that it's only one of 2 circuits he's designed that's actually any good. After the discount Sepang section comes a pair of poorly thought out low-speed left-hand bends into a short straight that leads into another bizarre complex of corners. A square left-hand bend is immediately followed by another unnecessarily long right-hander. However, this time it has an opening radius rather than a tightening radius. This section was known as the Max Chilton section due to it resembling a snail. The Max Chilton section exits onto the second overtaking opportunity on the straight, a massively long straight into a tight right-hand hairpin where the cars brake from 330 all the way down to 80 km per hour. The following medium left-hand bend sees the drivers back onto the main straight for another lap of boredom. Situated in an oversized car park outside an obscure stadium surrounded by slums and infested with every sort of tropical insect is the Miami Grand Prix circuit. With a layout as memorable as Alexander Rossi's F1 career, the track starts with a twisty first sector through some kinks that are like Cota's first sector if it were described over the phone whilst drunk. This is then followed by a straight that isn't straight, which leads directly into a technical section that makes Formula E tracks look fast and flowing. This leads to a stupidly narrow straight and then back towards a start-finish line. However, I've probably missed a section in my description due to it being so dull that I forgot it exists. The designer of the track has shown their commitment and dedication to bringing dull racing to the viewing public. If the layout isn't bad enough, the tacky surroundings of the track take it up another notch. Clearly, one of the designers looked at Yas Marina and said, "Yeah, let's do that, but make it even more tacky." It seems the designers decided to even include a metaphor for the track itself with their inclusion of fake water. The Grand Prix also attracts the worst parasites on society. This year, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk are both in attendance. I'm sure both of them are really interested in Formula 1 and not there for any other reason. With a grid filled with snobby celebs who think they're too good to be interviewed by Martin Brundle on an F1 grid walk and believe that Lewis Hamilton is a player for Manchester United, the paddock of Miami Grand Prix undoubtedly has the highest density of wankers in the world. If Monaco is the jewel in the F1 crown, Miami is the skid mark in the F1 underwear. Plopped onto the calendar between 2008 and 2012 was this smear of diarrhea. Built in Spain at the height of the global financial crisis, this track's stunning location cannot hide its equally garbage layout. In its first year, 2008, the track was the scene of possibly the most boring race in the history of Formula 1. During the 2008 European Grand Prix at Valencia, only a single overtake occurred. The track stepped it up a notch the following year, with not a single overtake occurring in 2009. 2010 was another snooze fest, Despite Mark Webber's attempts to spice up the action with his aerobatic display, 2011 would continue the trend. However, 2012 would see some actual excitement at the track. For 2013, Bernie Ecclestone clearly had some sense talked into him, and the track was axed. The layout was designed in such a way that you'd think it was intentionally trying to be as dull as possible. A fast turn 1 is immediately followed by the Spanish tradition of a useless chicane that ruins the flow of the track. This useless chicane is then followed by another chicane, as if the circuit designer was just trying to annoy us at this point. A short straight that isn't actually straight leads the cars towards a tight bend. Without the pointless chicanes, this would be the perfect opportunity to overtake. Instead, it just became another unremarkable slow bend. The cars then cross a bridge onto another straight that isn't actually straight. The not straight leads into yet another chicane. However, this chicane is at least a necessary one, and this one is one of the track's only two viable passing opportunities too. Pastor Maldonado attempted this on Lewis Hamilton in 2012, however he then remembered that he's Pastor Maldonado and decided to crash instead. The necessary chicane is followed by yet another not straight, and also the track's second passing place, the hairpin. The hairpin at the end of the third not straight on the track is not just the best place on the track to perform an overtake, it's also where the 2010 FIA Car Aerobatics Championship was held after Mark Webber in F1 and Josef Kral in GP2 flipped their cars here in 2010. The judges awarded Webber full points, but took some points off Josef Kral for missing the Santander sign on his flip. The aerobatic hairpin takes the cars then to a series of uninspiring kinks before a tight hairpin takes the cars to the finish line. If the Valencia street circuit were a movie, the title would be 25 Turns of Mediocrity. If designing horrendous racetracks in countries with the worst possible human rights records were an Olympic sport, Hermann Tilke would be a multiple-time gold medalist. It's quite fitting to bring up Olympic sports too, since the track is based around the abandoned Sochi Winter Olympic stadiums. Much like the Sochi Winter Olympics, the Russian Grand Prix was first held in 2014 to advertise the brutal and backwards dictatorship to the world. The TV directors would make you aware of this by consistently cutting to a scene of then F1 boss Bernie Ecclestone seated next to professional mass murderer and shit piano player Vladimir Putin. Turn 1 is barely a corner at all, and is really just an extension of the pit straight. The long run to turn 2 makes for constant lap 1 incidents. The result of this is that lap 2 is almost always under safety car. Turn 3 is the only unique part of the track. The sweeping left-hander sees the drivers at full throttle whilst pulling 5 Gs. In 2015, Romain Grosjean decided to test how strong the barrier was at this corner. Having tested the barrier, he concluded that it was indeed very strong, and retired from the race due to his car being completely destroyed. Turn 4 is a 90-degree right-hander that the drivers brake for while still fully loaded from Turn 3. However, this is very much a final frontier, as after Turn 4, the drivers must say goodbye to any sort of character as the track shows its true monotonous colours in Sector 2. Turn 4 exits onto a short straight into a 90-degree right-hand bend. This 90-degree right-hand bend exits onto a short straight into a 90-degree right-hand bend, which exits onto a short straight into a 90-degree left-hand bend. Getting creative here. I would try to make a unique joke for each corner in Sector 2, but unfortunately, due to every corner being exactly the same, that's not actually possible. It's quite hard to come up with new ideas for comments on the sector when Hermann Tilke himself also seemed to be as uncreative as an accountant's fashion sense. Following the 739 consecutive 90-degree bends, the track finds its way onto one of Hermann Tilke's favourite design features, a straight that isn't actually straight. Towards the end of the straight, that isn't straight, is the scene where Carlos Sainz crashed with a 47G impact in 2015, and where Nikita Mazepin hilariously crashed in GP3 a couple of years later. Mazepin's crash isn't particularly relevant since he crashed at every track, but seeing Mazepin in the wall is never not funny. Sector 3 is as uncreative as Sector 2, with 6 consecutive 90-degree bends taking the cars to the finish line. The Russian Grand Prix was axed in 2022 due to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Hopefully, Zelensky can order a HIMARS strike on this track so we never have to see it again. For its first Grand Prix, helped by cars starting out of position, it did actually provide some excitement. Just like Valencia did in 2012 and Sochi did in 2015, yet nobody misses those horrific racetracks. Same goes for Vegas, a track more dull than a 1999 Vauxhall Vectra. In a setting that seems to be visually identical to the Jeddah Corniche circuit, but the track provides 17 identical turns that leave you wondering where the cars even are on track. The only interesting part of the track is at turn 8, where there's a giant football that's actually a TV screen, which is also the only original thing in the entirety of the dreadful city of Las Vegas. It's usually in this point of the review when I talk over the track's layout, including each part. Unfortunately, every single corner looks exactly the same as the last one, so I can just say 90-degree corner on repeat. The track was also obscenely bumpy, despite being a brand new surface, leading to Lando Norris unintentionally testing to see if his car goes faster when it's moving backwards. Then of course, there's the amazing value for money that spectators get. $2,000 is the cheapest ticket, and for that you get a view of about 100 meters of track without a screen, ensuring that spectators get to see absolutely nothing. However, for $7,000, you can get a seat behind a large pillar which blocks your entire view, ensuring you get a premium experience of not seeing the race. However, if these more budget-friendly options aren't good enough for you, you can also get packages valued at over $1 million if you're actually brain dead. If you haven't wasted enough of your hard-earned money on tickets to seats without a view, you can also go into the many casinos and lose some money there. In addition to the absolute scam ticket prices, the dull track without any scenery also hosted the absolute worst parasites in society. Much like fellow terrible track Miami, the Las Vegas paddock truly has the world's highest density of wankers, with every brain-dead celebrity you've never heard of in attendance. Las Vegas is also quite possibly the ugliest venue on the entire F1 calendar, with the already run-down looking circuit infrastructure and hideous architecture of the surrounding buildings. It's truly an assault for the eyes. The only redeeming feature of the Las Vegas Grand Prix is that it clashed with the Rally of Japan and the Macau Grand Prix. This meant you could watch something better instead. Las Vegas, truly F1's toilet. These tracks are all some of the worst tracks we've ever seen in motorsport. Would you like to see some more reviews of terrible tracks, maybe some from beyond Formula 1? And what tracks would you want to add? Leave your ideas in the comments and remember to subscribe to the channel.